welcome back. Right now, you know what is a list, you know what is a function, moreover, what is a predicate and the primitive data in Lisp. The next part of the programming language is the possibility of create control structures. And I am talking about loops and conditions. With Lisp, you have at least one that you already know, the if condition. Theoretical background. The control structures in Lisp are not considered functions, even though they look like function, and I am going to show you, but officially they are macros, not functions. Let me show you an example. These ones. Each of these, an if-else condition. What is the black, the blue, the red, and the orange part? You can figure out, and I use the colors to facilitate this. Number one, if you want to create an if-else condition, as usual, open parentheses, closing parentheses. As usual, the first element after the open parentheses, the name of the function, in this case, the macro, if. And you can use if, uppercase, lowercase, or a combination. For this language, it's not going to be any difference. So, if. And then the first parameter is a predicate. The first parameter is something that returns true or false. In this case, in blue, true or false. The 3 is lower or equal to 2. If the result is true, this statement, the second parameter, is going to be executed. If the result is false, the orange one is the one that is going to be executed. The equivalent to that one is my comment here in green. Remember, semicolon is the beginning of a comment, and you can start a comment in a new line or at the end of the previous line. What can I do if I do not want to have the else part? If I do not want the else, I want nothing to happen if the condition is false. The only thing that I need to do is do not provide the second parameter. So for the macro, you have two options. Option number one, 2 parameters. Option number 2, 3 parameters. If you use 2 parameters or 3 parameters, always, 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 the first one is the condition. The 2 next parameters are going to be the instructions for the if and the instructions for the else. The instructions to be executed when the condition is true and the instructions to be executed when the condition is false. That's it. Even though the condition, the if, is a macro, the behavior is going to be the same that the behavior of a function. Any function return a result. In this case, this number, and you have been wondering why. Well, that is the value that is being returned by whatever is the result of the instruction that is executed. In this case, if I check the condition, it's going to take false. It's going to execute the else part. This addition is going to be executed. The result of the addition is the result for this instruction, and also is going to be the result for the complete if-else condition. And the equivalent of this in C++ should include this return. So, example 1. Example 2. Because the if-else returns something, is fine to use a single value there. So, in this case, this is a condition. It's asking if the 2 is greater than the 3. If the condition is true, this is going to be the value that is going to be returned. In this case, we are not providing an else like we did before. If you do not put an else to an if-else condition and the condition here is false, the result for the full instruction is going to be nil. Remember that we use nil in Lisp for false, but also nil is our equivalent to empty. So in this case, if the condition were true, I return 9, the condition is false, therefore it's going to return nil. In the next one, you can put an if and have other ifs inside. What if I ask you to translate this one to Java, C, C++? I have an if, this one, that is the one that is outside. The condition for that one is this 2 equal to. Very, very important. Remember that the equal, the comparison in Lisp is only one equal. So this is not assignation. So if 2 equal to is this part. And I need something in the if part, and maybe I have an else part. Now, if I review here, I have one parameter that is going to be from this open parenthesis and move until this closing parenthesis. Again, I put colors to try to facilitate the lecture. So you know that the parenthesis in blue is one thing, and then something in red, something in yellow, and the gray black parenthesis is the one that is closing the if that is inside. So this one is one part, and this 9 is the second parameter for the first if. So that 9 is kind of the else part. The first part is this one that is an other if condition that is inside of the first one, inside of the true part for the first one. We have another condition here. You can put the else part. Inside of the first one, you return 4, and inside of the else part, you return 6. So you have this 2 if else. Here, you can start noticing the problem with the parentheses. Good thing about the parentheses is a very, very, very simple syntactical rule. So this idea of everything is open parentheses, closing parentheses, the instruction and the parameters is simple, but, and in some point, it's kind of complex if I remove the colors to figure out which parenthesis is related with which one. So a second thing for the if condition in Lisp, you can use an if condition like this one as a parameter for another function. Because remember, the if return a value. So you can put the if inside of the call to a function. And basically the value that that if condition returns is the one that the function is going to be using. So in this case, for instance, I have this instruction plus 4, and I am going to do the addition of 4 plus something, and that something is going to be whatever result in this condition. Now, there is one problem. So far, the examples that I show you are like the if, the condition, and only one line inside. Even with the else, only one line inside. What if we want to have an if-else condition with multiple lines? Well, you know, in Java, C, C++, if you need more than one line, you add the curly brackets. But remember, you only need the curly brackets when you want to put together multiple lines. Now, what happened here, if I want to put together multiple lines, I cannot use the curly brackets. The curly brackets do not exist in Lisp. So instead of using the curly brackets to create this block, what I am going to use is another function with this name, proc_n. The use of this function is to put together several lines. You can think about this guy like your equivalent for the open curly bracket and therefore closing curly brackets. Every single time that you need something like this, you are going to use this guy. So, one example. I have an if condition here. Notice that this open parenthesis is going to close here. All this is my if. The condition is the first parameter, the second element after the open parenthesis. The next thing is the instruction that I want to execute when the condition is true. But I want to have multiple instructions. So what I do is put those instructions, 1, 2, 3, 4 instructions that I want to execute when the condition is true, all my instructions together inside of another one. Notice this parenthesis. So I put a name for a function, this name, and that is the name for the function that replaces the curly bracket. So now all of this together are the instructions that I want to run when the condition is true. And then this one is the instruction that I want to run when the condition is false. So prog n to create block of instructions. Good. For this example, what is the output of this example? Number one, if we execute the program, it's like the condition is true or false. 3 greater than 2, right? True. So this instruction is not going to be executed never, because this one is the else part. The program is going to run whatever is inside of my prog n block. First one, this instruction is going to be executed. I am going to have a hello. That hello is because the print instruction. This instruction is going to be executed. I have this word here because this print. This instruction is going to be executed. I am going to have this one because that print instruction. Finally, this one. This one is not printing, but this plus is a function. When I run the program, I am going to show also a 4 because of this. This if condition returns something. Well, when you have only one line, like in the previous examples, it's obvious that the if returns the value of that line. What happens when you have multiple lines? What happens when you have something like this? Well, the easy solution. You return the value of the last line that you execute. So in this case, the last line is this plus 2. This function returns a value, the 4. That value is the same value that is going to be returned by this function, prog n. And that one is the same value that is going to be returned by the if. And that is the value that you're going to show on the screen at the end. What happens if I remove this plus, right? It's going to return whatever print return. What is the return of a print? The same value that is printed. So if I remove this one, the last line is the print WhatsApp, and therefore WhatsApp is the value returned to prog n, and is the same value that prog n returned to the if. And then instead of this 4 here, I will have this again. Good? The loops. We have multiple options for loops in Java, C, C++. In particular with Lisp, we're going to move forward with this option. The instruction, the function that is going to help us to do loops is dotimes. Dotimes. As usual, open parentheses and closing parentheses. So in this case, opening here, closing here. The first thing after the open parentheses, the name of the function, dotimes, and then the parameters. Parameters. This is the first time that the parameter for a particular function should be a list. So after dotimes, what you to put is a list of elements, which means after dotimes, you are going to open parentheses. And if you open the parentheses, well, you close the parentheses. After that one, everything else are the instructions that you want to execute. So you can have this instruction, or more. Now, this list of parameters. The first element. For the first time, inside of a Lisp, inside of parentheses, we are not going to put the name of a function because that one is not a function, it's just a list with values. The first one is the variable that we want to use to be aware of in which of the iteration we are. That one is kind of the if you think about a for loop, this one is the equivalent to the variable that you put there for the for loop. It's the variable that is going to help you to count how many times you have been inside of the loop. Then, inside of the same list, you have a value. A value that represents how many times you want this loop to go. So in this case, below x and 4, I want the loop to run 4 times. So I put x, that is the variable that I'm going to be using. At some point I can print x and I can print 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever. And I need to put the value 4, because I want this loop to run 4 times. Optional. I can put only 2 values because that is what I need for the loop, or I can put 3 values. The third value is optional, and if I put something here, that is the value that I want this function to return when the function finishes. So that one is my return value. In this case, we do not apply the rule that the return value is going to be the last one inside of the loop. The return value is whatever you put here, or if you do not put anything like I did here, I just ignore the return value. My return value, the result of the dotimes function, is going to be something like nil. Good? So dotimes, the first parameter should be a list. The first time that the list is not a function. And that list have at least 2 elements. The first one, the name for a variable. The second one, how many times I want the do to go. And optional, a third parameter that represents the value that I want to return. Anything that you want to return after this loop finish. So, reviewing the example. Parentheses, parentheses. Dotimes, and my variable is x, and I want this one to run 4 times. And the instructions that I want to run 4 times is this one, parentheses, parentheses. I want to print hello 4 times. The result, when I run the program, I have hello 4 times. And because I do not specify any return value, the return value was nil, you're going to have as a return value the nil. The other example, we need variables because, you know, if you want to do something inside of a for loop, sometimes I would like to have some kind of variable and inside of the for loop, change the value for that variable. This is a good time to introduce variable declaration. The instruction that we're going to use to do something like this is this one. So if I want to create a variable int x, and I want to put x, the value of 5, the equivalent of that line in Lisp is open parentheses, closing parentheses, and then the variable and the 5, and let's use the word set, and why not set f, the function set. To create a variable in Lisp, what you need is to provide a name and provide an initial value. So the name and the initial value. In this case, I have this variable bag. I put a number 2 inside. This is a function. The value that is going to be returning is going to be the value that put inside of the variable. So this call return a 2. In this example, I will have a 5 because it's the number that I am using. Good. So this example here, create a variable, and I am going to try to use that variable in my program below. Here, I am giving you an example with more than one line. So line number 1, open and closing parentheses, I have a new variable. And that variable exists from this point below. You create a variable, the variable exists. And in particular, this one is going to behave like a global variable. We're going to talk about global or local later, but this one is alone, and you can think this one is global because basically you can use this variable, the one that you create with the set f, in any other line. So parentheses with the set f, and any other thing that you put inside parentheses, doesn't matter how many lines, can use that variable from this point below. So dotimes, I want to create a for loop. The for loop, the variable that I'm going to be using, the name is x. How many times I want to run the loop? 3 times. What I want to do inside of the loop? This instruction. Set f again. Yeah. Why? Because I need the equal. This one was like bag equal to. This is my equal. And also create a variable, but because bag do not exist. So from this point below, bag exists. This line is a dotimes. Dotimes, a for loop. And I want to use the variable x. Okay, the variable x. And I want this loop to run 3 times. Okay, you want the loop to run 3 times? So usually Java C++ is like, okay, we can start with 0. And because you want to run this 3 times, I want to run 0, 1, and 2. And I need to increment the value of the variable. Now, the instruction inside is, okay, there is a multiplication. Is the first thing that is going to happen because it's the inside parentheses. And it's a multiplication of bag, this part. And then that one is inside of this set f. And is the second parameter. What is the first one? The same variable. And that is what I want to do. I have another instruction here. Notice this one have another group of parentheses. Print bag. I want to print here. If I go with C, something like this. So my programming Lisp, the equivalent with C. And well, at the end, every single line is going to be printing for you the result. So set f, print as a result the 2 because it's the value stored inside of the variable. When you run the dotimes, remember, here should be the value that you want to return. If you put nothing there, the return is going to be nil. And when you run print, it's going to be printing the value. And if you run this, you're going to notice the number printed 2 times. One, the instruction print. The second one, the return value of the function. Any question? Okay, guys, see you next week. Thank you.